is more than enough for all of me, for every thirsty, every need. You satisfy me with your love, and all I have in you is more than enough. You are my supply, my breath of life, still more awesome than I know. You are my reward, worth living for, still more awesome than I know. All of you is more than enough for all of me, for every thirst and every need. You satisfy me with your love, and all I have in you is more than enough. You're my sacrifice of greatest pride, still more awesome than I know. You're the coming King, you are everything, still more awesome than I know. And all of you is more than enough for and for me, for every thirst and every need. You satisfy me with your love, and all I have in you, more than all I want, more than all I need. You are more than enough for me, more than all I know, more than all I can see. You are more than enough, more than all I want, more than all I can see. You are more than enough for me, more than all I know, more than all I can see. You are more than enough, and all of you is more than enough for all of me, for every thirst and every need. You satisfy me with your love, and all I have in you, and all I have in you, and all I have in you is more than enough.
Eli's sons were wicked men. They had no regard for the Lord. Now it was the practice of the priests with the people that whenever anyone offered a sacrifice, and while the meat was being boiled, the servant of the priest would come with a three-pronged fork in his hand. He would plunge it into the pan or kettle or cauldron or pot, and the priest would take for himself whatever the fork brought up. This is how they treated all the Israelites who came to Shiloh. But even before the fat was burned, the servant of the priest would come and say to the man who was sacrificing,
"Give the priest some meat to roast. He won't accept boiled meat from you, but only raw."
If the man said to him,
Let the fat be burned up first, and then take whatever you want.
The servant would then answer,
No, hand it over now. If you don't, I'll take it by force.
This sin of the young men was very great in the Lord's sight, for they were treating the Lord's offering with contempt.
Hi everyone. Today I want to start with the story of a novel's biographical background and its publication. I have a question. Have you read the novel or watched the movie Gone with the Wind? It's a novel written by Margaret Mitchell. At that time, she was an unknown writer, but this novel made her world famous. Miss Mitchell was forced to leave her job at the Atlanta Journal due to an ankle injury. At the time, she couldn't work, so she started writing a novel as a hobby. 10 years later, she completed the novel and sent the manuscript off to many publishers, but none of the publishers showed an interest in her novel. Another 7 years passed. Then, one day, Mitchell read an article in the local newspaper that the president of the largest publishing company in New York City was visiting in Atlanta. And returning to New York, she ran immediately towards the railroad station and met the president there. Mitchell gave him a copy of her manuscript, but the president was not interested. Mitchell left the railroad station quickly and went to the post office, where she sent a telegram to the president. A little while later, the railway guard delivered the telegram asking the president to please read my manuscript once. But the president was still not interested. A little while later, the same telegram message was sent to the president again, but still he had no interest. Finally, a third telegram was delivered, and then he started to read the manuscript even after the train arrived at its destination and all other passengers got off the train. The president could not stop reading the manuscript. So, the novel Gone with the Wind was published, has been translated into different 27 languages, and 16 million copies were sold. A woman spent 10 years writing a novel, and it took 7 years to publish that novel. 17 years was a dark age for Margaret Mitchell. In the Bible, there is a similar story. A woman was waiting a baby. She did not get pregnant because the Lord had closed her womb. During that period, it was a dark age for her. Whenever she went up to the house of the Lord, another wife of her husband, her rival, provoked her. She was in deep anguish, crying bitterly as she prayed to the Lord. She made a vow, saying, O Lord, Almighty, if you will only look upon your servant's misery and remember me, and not forget your servant, but give her a son, then I will give him to the Lord for all the days of his life, and no razor will ever be used on his head. She finally had a baby. In this story, she is Hannah. Her son is Samuel. When Samuel was born, Israel was the dark age. After the death of Joshua, the Israelites had gone astray during the era of Judges. This up and down cycle of sin and salvation was long and painful for Israel. In 1 Samuel chapter 1, we can see how Eli fell. As Hannah was praying to the Lord for her pregnancy, Eli watched her, seeing her lips moving, but hearing no sound. He thought she had been drinking. Although Eli was the high priest of Shiloh and a judge, he was depicted ostensibly as a man of exceptional spiritual maturity, but spiritually blind. In 1 Samuel chapter 2, we meet Eli's two sons. Eli's sons are described as scoundrels who had no respect for the law. According to Deuteronomy chapter 18 verse 3, priests received the shoulder, the two cheeks or jaw, and the stomach of any sacrificial ox or sheep. But these sons held God's system of distribution in contempt by picking the best portions for themselves, including the fatty portions. In chapter 2, verse 17, said, "This sin of the young men was very great in the Lord's sight, for they were treating the Lord's offering with contempt. However, today I want to share with you that even in sin, even in darkness, there is hope, because God sends His man to fulfill His promise." God listened to Hannah's prayer and sent Samuel for that dark age of the Israelites. Hannah did not have a baby. This was a darkness for Hannah's life. In that time, having no children depicts darkness, but she prayed and waited. As a result, God sent Samuel to fulfill His promise for Israel's monarchy era. Not only Hannah was happy, but also Samuel was a hope for Israel. By the beginning of the 16th century, it was obvious that the church in Western Europe was in urgent need of reform. It seems to many that the lifeblood of the church had ceased to flow through its veins. The church's legal system was badly in need of overhaul, and the ecclesiastical bureaucracy had become notoriously inefficient and corrupt. The models of clergy were often lax and a source of scandal to their congregations. Even though Europe was in the Dark Age, God did not ignore His people and sent Martin Luther and John Calvin to reform the church. As Christians, we should pray for our needs to God and wait for God's response. God will not ignore our prayers. In 1 Samuel chapter 2, verses 18 to 19, "But Samuel was ministering before the Lord, a boy wearing a linen ephod. Each year his mother made him a little robe and took it to him when she went up with her husband to offer the annual sacrifice." Even though Elijah's sons were wicked men, God made Samuel minister before the Lord. Elijah's mistake and the sins of his sons show how priests were corrupt before God in that era. Many ministers are corrupt in South Korea still today, especially senior pastors in megachurches. There seems to be no hope, but God will not destroy His church that the Lord bought with His own blood. God will send a good minister like Samuel in each era. Through this point, we can know if a minister does not listen to God, God may abandon him. Therefore, ministers should keep in a good relationship with God. Not only ministers, but lay people also will be abandoned if they do not listen to God. In chapter 2, verse 20 to 21, Eli would bless Elkanah and his wife, saying, "May the Lord give you children by this woman to take the place of the one she prayed for and gave to the Lord." Then they would go home, and the Lord was gracious to Hannah. She conceived and gave birth to 3 sons and 2 daughters. Meanwhile, the boy Samuel grew up in the presence of the Lord. Through these verses, we can know that God was gracious to Hannah. She gave birth to 3 sons and 2 daughters. Since Samuel lived away from his parents to serve God, God sent more children to Hannah. God provided Hannah with more than she expected. God knows us and what we need. Lastly, I want to tell a story. Historically, it was Earth's darkest period. It seemed like God was not working anymore. But a baby whom God sent was born into the world because God so loved the world that He gave His one and only Son, that whoever believes in Him shall not perish, but have eternal life. Even in sin, even in darkness, there is hope, because God sends His man to fulfill His promise.